Between twin twilight whispers and unseen echoes.
Chapter 10 Into the Unknown. Jack leaned against the stone wall of the Iron Guard's hidden bunker, the dim lights casting long shadows across the room. His heart was a storm of emotions. Anger, grief, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The memories of Sarah, the president, and everything he'd once known were like jagged shards in his mind, each thought cutting deeper than the last. Darlo, the Iron Guard's second-in-command, watched Jack closely. The Iron Guard had retreated into the shadows after being decimated in Hiroshima. Now they operated in secret, and Jack had become an unlikely ally.
Jack. Darlo's voice broke the heavy silence. We need to talk.
Jack turned to face him, his expression unreadable. His only focus now was to find Sarah's killer. Nothing else mattered.
We have a lead, Darlo continued, his tone careful, on the one responsible for Sarah's death.
Jack's jaw tightened. The Iron Guard's mention of Sarah was like salt in a wound. He believed she was dead, taken from him by some unknown terrorist. But the promise of finding her killer was enough to make him listen.
What do you need me to do?
Jack's voice was steady, but his eyes were dark with resolve. Darlo didn't hesitate.
We need you to help us retrieve something from Vahelig Valley. It's crucial to our operations.
Vahelig Valley. Jack repeated, the name unfamiliar but ominous.
It's one of our strongholds, Darlo explained, his gaze never leaving Jack's. Or it was. We've lost contact, and we need to secure something vital from there.
Jack's mind raced. Vahelig Valley was supposed to be a secure location. He knew that the Iron Guard wouldn't risk everything for nothing, and that made him uneasy. Yet, the thought of finding Sarah's killer eclipsed any doubts he had. And what exactly am I retrieving? Jack asked, suspicion lacing his words.
Darlo's expression remained impassive. A component. A very special component. One that could change the balance of power. You don't need to know more than that.
Jack felt a cold sweat form at the base of his neck. He knew what helping the Iron Guard could mean. Assisting in the creation of something devastating, something far beyond what he could morally justify. But Sarah's face flashed in his mind, and the desperation to avenge her outweighed his ethical concerns. I'll help, Jack said, his voice resolute. But once this is over, you hold up your end of the deal.
Darlo nodded, a shadow of a smile tugging at his lips. We leave immediately.
The Iron Guard's vehicle was an imposing, heavily armored off-road machine, made to withstand the harshest conditions. Jack sat in the passenger seat, his fingers tapping restlessly on his knee as the Iron Guard soldier behind the wheel navigated the rough terrain. Darlo sat beside him, silent and focused, while two more soldiers sat in the back, their weapons at the ready. The vehicle roared through the barren landscape, the horizon stretching out endlessly before them. The desolate scenery matched Jack's mood, empty, void of life, and filled with the echoes of what had been lost. As the vehicle rumbled along, Jack's thoughts were a storm of conflicting emotions. He knew that helping the Iron Guard was risky, but the thought of avenging Sarah's death drowned out his moral compass. He had lost everything that mattered, and this mission, as twisted as it was, offered him a chance at retribution.
You seem tense, Darlo observed, breaking the silence.
Jack glanced at him, his expression guarded. Just thinking about what we're getting into.
Darlo nodded, understanding. Vahelig Valley was one of our strongest outposts. We kept something important there, something we need to finish what we started.
Jack's mind was elsewhere, lost in thoughts of Sarah. The Iron Guard had information on her killer, and that was the only reason he was here. The mission was a means to an end, and if helping them meant finding the person responsible for Sarah's death, he would do whatever it took. The vehicle hit a rough patch of terrain, jolting everyone inside. Jack gripped the armrest, his thoughts momentarily disrupted by the jarring motion. The Iron Guard soldier behind the wheel didn't flinch, maintaining his steely focus on the road ahead.
We haven't had contact with Vahelig Valley in some time, Darlo continued, his tone growing more serious. It was one of our most secure locations, but something's gone wrong. We need to secure the package and get out of there before anyone else shows up.
Jack's unease deepened. The more he learned about this mission, the more dangerous it seemed. But he pushed those thoughts aside. He was here for one reason: to find Sarah's killer. Everything else was secondary. As they drove deeper into the wilderness, the landscape grew more unforgiving. Rocky outcrops loomed on either side, and the path ahead was a treacherous mix of sharp turns and steep drops. The vehicle's powerful engine growled as it climbed a steep incline, the tires gripping the loose gravel with precision. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as they neared Vahailig Valley. He had no idea what awaited them there, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every instinct told him that something was very wrong.
Chapter 11: Weather or Not. The trail to Mount Weather's secret entrance was hidden in the dense undergrowth, just as Ghost had described. Emily, Stefan, and Ghost moved swiftly, their footsteps almost silent as they navigated the rugged terrain. The night was cold, and the wind whistled through the trees, but their focus was unbroken.
"Stay close," Ghost murmured, barely audible over the rustling leaves. His tone was tense, every word laced with urgency. They reached a steep incline, where the path narrowed into what looked like a natural rock formation. Ghost knelt, brushing aside a layer of moss and dirt to reveal a small, reinforced hatch. He pressed a sequence of numbers into a hidden keypad, and the hatch clicked open with a faint hiss, revealing a dark tunnel leading into the mountain. "This is it," Ghost said, his voice low. "Stay sharp. Once we're inside, it'll be a straight shot to the Nexus room, but we'll have to move fast."
Stefan nodded, his face set in determination.
Emily felt her pulse quicken as she adjusted the strap of her pack and tightened her grip on her sidearm. The weight of the mission was heavy on her shoulders, but there was no room for doubt now. They descended into the tunnel, the walls closing in around them as the hatch sealed shut behind them. The air was cool and damp, and the sound of their footsteps echoed softly in the confined space. Ahead, a faint light flickered, illuminating the way forward.
As they moved deeper into the mountain, Ghost began to speak, his voice carrying easily in the tunnel. "Mount Weather's been around for a long time," he said, his voice laced with tension. "Built during the Cold War, it was designed to house the U.S. government in the event of a nuclear attack. They've updated it over the years, added new tech, new facilities, but the basic structure's the same."
Emily listened intently, knowing that every bit of information Ghost shared could be crucial.
"They've got everything down here," Ghost continued. "Control rooms, medical facilities, living quarters. It's a self-sustaining underground city, built to keep the government running no matter what happens up top. But what most people don't know is that Mount Weather isn't just a safe house. It's a hub, nexus, for some of the most classified operations in the country."
Stefan glanced at Ghost, his eyes narrowing. "And that's where we're headed."
Ghost nodded. "The Nexus room is the nerve center. Everything runs through there: communications, data, power. That's where we find answers."
Emily's mind raced as she processed the information. They were heading straight into the heart of the operation, the place where everything connected. It was a bold move, but it might be their only shot.
As they approached a reinforced door, Ghost motioned for them to halt. He pulled out a small device and attached it to the keypad beside the door.
After a few tense seconds, the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor. They slipped inside, moving quickly and quietly through the narrow passageways. The facility was eerily silent, the usual hum of machinery and distant voices absent. It was as if the entire complex was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen.
Finally, they reached a large, heavily secured door at the end of the corridor.
Ghost paused, taking a deep breath before turning to Emily and Stefan. "This is it," he whispered. "The Nexus room is on the other side. Once we're in, there's no turning back."
Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Stefan's expression was grim, his jaw clenched in determination.
Ghost placed a hand on the door's access panel, and after a moment, it slid open.
The room beyond was vast, filled with servers, consoles, and equipment humming with energy. Arranged in concentric hexagons around a large empty space in the center of the room, a massive digital display covered the far side wall, the doors closing behind them. For a moment, they simply stood there, taking in the magnitude of what lay before them. Ghost broke the silence.
"We've got work to do."
They could hear a large group of people coming down the corridor behind them. They quickly ducked behind a tall row of servers, Ghost motioning for them to stay calm and quiet. They could hear the technicians and engineers talking amongst themselves as they entered as a group of about 7.
"The team really knocked this one out the park," one said.
"Yeah, I know they're good. But this is next level. Angkor Wat site is secured, its counterpart disabled, and they are even heavy one."
Then, just as they were passing the first row of monitors, blue strobe lights started flashing above the wall display, the screen flashing the message incoming transfer node 1, the engineers hastening their movement towards the various terminals.
Back in the Echo. The sun was beginning to set as they reached the final stretch. The sky was a fiery orange, casting long shadows across the landscape. Jack's eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the stronghold. "There," one of the soldiers in the back seat said, pointing ahead. Jack followed his gaze and saw it. A cluster of buildings nestled against the base of a mountain. Vahalig Valley, but something was off. Even from a distance, Jack could tell that the place was in disarray. The structures were damaged, smoke rising from several points. It looked more like a war zone than a stronghold.
Darlow's face darkened as he took in the scene. What the hell happened here?
The vehicle slowed to a crawl as they approached the entrance to the compound. The gates were twisted and bent, hanging loosely from their hinges. The entire place was eerily silent, with no sign of life. Jack's heart raced as they rolled into the compound. The devastation was worse up close. Buildings reduced to rubble, scorch marks on the ground, and the unmistakable stench of burnt metal. The Iron Guard soldiers disembarked quickly, weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning for any threats.
Darlow motioned for Jack to follow as they cautiously moved deeper into the compound. But
the tension was palpable, every step echoing in the silence. Jack's hand hovered over his sidearm, ready to draw at the first sign of danger.
"This wasn't supposed to happen," Darlow muttered, his voice tight with anger. Vahalig Valley was impenetrable. But
Jack remained silent, his mind racing. Whatever had attacked this place, it had done so with overwhelming force. The Iron Guard had underestimated their enemies, and now they were paying the price. They passed through a corridor littered with debris, the walls scarred from what looked like heavy gunfire. Jack's thoughts drifted to Sarah on throat. If this mission led him to her killer, then the destruction around him was a small price to pay. But as they entered a large, open room, something caught Jack's eye. Amid the wreckage, partially buried under a pile of rubble, was a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was out of place in this environment, a strange anomaly that made Jack's pulse quicken. He knelt down, carefully brushing away the debris, and pulled the paper free. As he unfolded it, his breath caught in his throat. It was a sketch. A rough, hastily drawn image, but unmistakable in its style. Jack's hands trembled as he recognized the drawing. It was Sarah's work. She had been here.
Chapter 12. Nexus Raid, 24 hours ago. In the Echo. The rhythmic hum of the Chinook's blades reverberated through the cabin, vibrating in Tabasco Jacobs's bones. The air inside was thick with anticipation, the kind that pressed down on your chest and made it hard to breathe. Outside, the desert landscape of Vahalig Valley stretched endlessly beneath them, a barren, sun-baked expanse that seemed as unforgiving as the mission ahead. Tabasco adjusted the strap on his rifle, his eyes scanning the faces of his team. These were men who had been through hell and back, soldiers from the Navy's elite SEAL Team 6, hardened by countless missions. They were quiet now, focused, each man preparing himself for what was to come. This was the kind of silence that came before the storm, a silence filled with lethal intent. 5 minutes out, came the pilot's voice over the comms. The Chinook was part of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Nighthawks, who were renowned for getting teams in and out of the most dangerous places on Earth with surgical precision. Tabasco nodded to himself. They'd done this 100 times before, but tonight was different. Their primary objective? Disable the nexus point hidden within Vahalig Valley, the enemy's gateway between the overlap and Echo. But it wasn't just a smash and grab. They were going to plant a time-delayed device, leave, and let the place blow to hell after they were long gone. Simple, but with high stakes. "This is it, boys," Tabasco said, his voice a low growl. "We get in, we set the device, and we're out. No hero shit tonight. Just do the job." The team nodded, their faces obscured by night vision goggles, but Tabasco knew their expressions. They were ready. The Chinook descended, landing in a cloud of dust that billowed up around them like a ghost. The team disembarked swiftly, rifles raised, moving like shadows across the desert floor. The night was brutally cold, a stark contrast to the blistering heat of the day. But the SEALs were accustomed to such extremes. Fragileworlds was a fortress, an isolated compound surrounded by miles of nothingness. Its high walls loomed out of the darkness as they approached, a silent monolith against the starry sky. The place was supposed to be heavily guarded, but the lack of visible security was unnerving. The team moved cautiously, the silence almost deafening. Tabasco signaled to Razor, his point man, to take out the lone sentry they spotted on the wall. Razor was quick and efficient, his suppressed rifle barely making a sound as the guard crumpled to the ground. The team advanced, breaching the outer perimeter with practiced ease. Inside the compound, the walls seemed to close in, and the tension ratcheted up. They cleared room after room, encountering only a few guards, each engagement swift and deadly. The real challenge was ahead, the nexus point, deep within the compound, where the enemy's most prized secret was hidden. Finally, they reached the room that housed the nexus. The door was reinforced, but not enough to withstand Bob the Unbuilder, their demolitions expert. With a few well-placed charges, the door blew inward, and the team stormed inside. The nexus room was otherworldly. Strange machines lined the walls, humming with energy, and in the center, a large circular platform glowed with an ominous blue light. This was it, the gateway between dimensions. "Bob, get that device set," Tabasco ordered, his eyes scanning the room for threats. Bob the Unbuilder moved with purpose, attaching the time-delayed device to the platform's base. The device was small, but packed a punch, enough to bring the whole place down once they were safely out. "We're good to go," Bob said, setting the timer. 15 minutes. Tabasco was about to give the order to move when he noticed something off. A faint noise, almost like a whimper, coming from a door at the far end of the room. He signaled for Razor to check it out. Razor approached cautiously, finding the door locked but not heavily secured. He breached it quickly, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber beyond. What he found inside made his heart skip a beat. "Boss," Razor called out, his voice low but tense, "you need to see this." Tabasco joined Razor at the door, peering inside. There, huddled in the corner, was a little girl, no older than 7 or 8. She was dirty, her clothes torn and stained with dust, but her wide eyes were clear, filled with a mix of terror and hope. Tabasco cursed under his breath. "Shit, what the hell is a kid doing here?" The girl looked up at them, her small frame trembling. Tabasco's mind raced. The mission was time-critical, but leaving her behind wasn't an option. "Can you walk?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The girl nodded, though she looked like she could collapse at any moment. Tabasco scooped her up, feeling her slight weight against his chest. "We need to get the hell out of here," he said, urgency sharpening his tone. The team moved fast, retracing their steps through the compound. The silence was gone, replaced by the ticking clock in Tabasco's head. They had less than 15 minutes before the device blew, and the desert around them would become a hellscape of debris and fire. They reached the extraction point just as the Chinook touched down, its rotors kicking up a storm of dust. The team boarded swiftly, Tabasco securing the girl into a seat before strapping in himself. As the helicopter lifted off, climbing into the night sky, Tabasco looked down at the compound below, now a shrinking speck in the vast desert. The mission had been a success. They had disabled the Nexus, and soon it would be nothing but rubble. But the presence of the girl raised more questions than it answered. Who was she? How had she ended up in a place like Bahilivale? As the Chinook flew through the darkness, the desert below slipping away into the night, Tabasco couldn't shake the feeling that they had just uncovered something far more complex than they had bargained for. This wasn't just another mission. This was the start of something much bigger and far more dangerous than any of them could have imagined.
Chapter 13. Node 1. The Nexus room at Mount Weather buzzed with quiet anticipation, a tension so thick it felt like the air itself was vibrating. The hum of servers mixed with the rapid keystrokes of technicians, their faces bathed in the cool, turquoise glow of computer screens. Engineers moved purposefully from terminal to terminal, but there was an unmistakable edge to their movements, a silent understanding that something significant was about to unfold. Stefan, Emily, and Ghost remained hidden in the shadows, their eyes fixed on the center of the room where the large hexagonal hologram hovered. The message that had just flashed across the screens. Incoming transfer node 1, hung in the air, its implications unknown but undoubtedly critical. Emily's breath caught as the hologram flickered, the soft blue light intensifying before it resolved into a sharp, clear image. Stefan tensed beside her, every muscle coiled, ready for whatever was about to happen. Even Ghost, who rarely showed anything but calm detachment, seemed more focused than usual, his eyes locked on the hologram. The room fell into a hushed silence as the image of President Holden appeared on the hologram, his sudden presence a shock to everyone, especially those who were still unaware they were being watched. The technicians stood at attention, the weight of the president's authority pressing down on them.
Mount Weather, this is Holden. The president's voice echoed through the room, resonating with controlled urgency. Report on the incoming transfer.
A senior technician, the supervisor, stepped forward, her fingers hesitating briefly over the keys before she began to speak.
Mr. President, the transfer window closed before we could retrieve detailed data, but we did capture a brief image. It's a child, sir, but we lost the signal before further identification could be confirmed.
A child, Holden repeated, his eyes narrowing. Did you make any connection to Agent Harper's missing daughter?
The supervisor hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Given the circumstances and the known fact that Sarah Harper is unaccounted for, we believe it's highly probable. The twins have been notified and they're insisting she be brought to them immediately.
Holden's expression hardened. The twins. Of course they would. What's the status of the team?
They're already en route to the Royal Enclave, sir. The situation is developing quickly, and further information is needed urgently.
Stefan exchanged a quick glance with Emily. The mention of the twins, the urgency in Holden's voice, this was far more significant than they had anticipated. Ghost remained motionless, though Stefan could tell he was absorbing every word, every detail.
Holden's gaze swept the room, his eyes dark and unreadable. Continue your analysis and send all data to NORAD immediately. I want an update from Node 3 with confirmed identity and intention.
As the hologram began to fade, Holden's eyes lingered for just a moment on the room's shadowed corners.
Samsung Health.
Stefan felt a brief flicker of unease, as though the president had somehow sensed their presence. But then the image was gone, and the room was plunged back into the tense hum of servers and whispered commands.
Ghost finally stirred, his voice a low murmur. Mount Weather is just the communications hub. Node 1 is their relay point, but the real data and the real decisions are being made at NORAD. That's where we need to go.
Stefan nodded, the path before them now clear, even if it was steeped in more mystery than before. And the Royal Enclave, he asked, knowing Ghost would have more information than he was letting on.
Ghost's eyes flicked towards the hologram's lingering afterglow. The twins are involved, which means there's more at stake than just a missing child. The Enclave. It's where the powers behind the Echo reside, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. For now, we focus on NORAD.
Stefan glanced back at the room, the engineers oblivious to their presence. Mountains, always the mountains, he muttered.
Emily shot him a curious look. Isolation. Security. But also, something else she said, echoing his thoughts. The mountains hide things, and not just facilities. There's history there, ancient and hidden.
Ghost gave a slight nod, his expression unreadable. Always the mountains. Seems about right.
The three of them moved silently, slipping out of the Nexus room and into the cold mountain air outside. The stakes were escalating rapidly, and the clock was ticking. Whatever awaited them at NORAD, they knew it would bring them closer to the truth about the Echo, the twins, and the mysterious forces that were now in motion.
As they made their way down the shadowed paths of Mount Weather, Stefan couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading into the heart of something much bigger than even he had anticipated. The involvement of the twins, the insistence that Sarah be brought to the Royal Enclave, all of it pointed to a confrontation that would change everything. And for the first time, Stefan felt a cold certainty settle over him. His father was right. There was no turning back. Not now. Not ever.
Chapter 14. In Search of Sarah. Jack stood at the edge of Vahalig Valley, a desolate expanse that mirrored the emptiness within him. The valley, with its cracked earth and sparse twisted trees, seemed as lifeless as the hope he was desperately clinging to. The wind swept through the barren landscape, lifting the dirt into spirals that danced before settling back down. He crouched down, scooping a handful of the dry soil, letting it sift through his fingers. As the wind carried the last grains away, Jack's mind drifted to a memory he couldn't escape. A day that had changed everything. It was supposed to be a normal day. Jack had dropped Sarah off at school, a routine so familiar that he had gone through the motions without thinking. But something had been off that morning. Jack had been distracted, his mind elsewhere. Maybe it was the pressure from work, or the sense that something was looming on the horizon. Whatever it was, it had pulled him away from the moment. Sarah had forgotten something, her lunch, perhaps, or a book. When she mentioned it, Jack snapped. His words were sharper than they should have been, tinged with irritation that he normally kept in check. He saw the hurt in her eyes, a look that still haunted him. She tried to apologize, but he brushed her off, too wrapped up in his own thoughts to really hear her. He regretted it almost immediately, but there was no time to take it back. He watched her walk into the school, her shoulders slumped, and something in him told him that he should have hugged her, told her he loved her. But the moment passed and he drove away, unaware that this would be the last ordinary moment they would share. Later that day, as he stood in the middle of routine operations, his earpiece crackled to life. At first it was just static, but then came the voice, clear, calm, and directed only at him.
Hello, Jack. Stop. Just listen.
Jack froze. He looked around, expecting someone else to react, but his colleagues continued working, oblivious. The voice was meant for him alone. It repeated, softer this time, more menacing. He pulled the earpiece out, staring at it in disbelief. It looked normal, but he knew it wasn't. The voice didn't belong to anyone in his team. It belonged to someone who had been watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The realization hit him like a blow. Sarah had been taken, and he hadn't been there to protect her. Jack rushed to the school, his heart pounding with a fear he had never known. When he arrived, the staff told him what had happened. A man had come to the school, claiming to be from the Secret Service. He had used Jack's name, his credentials, everything, to convince them that he was there on official business. The man had been calm, collected, and utterly convincing. He had taken Sarah, leading her away with a smile, telling her that her father had sent him. Jack demanded to see the security footage. When he watched it, his blood ran cold. The man, older, tall, dressed in a suit. But something seemed off in the way he moved, as if he was too sure of himself, too practiced. He was no ordinary kidnapper. He was a ghost, a phantom who had stepped into Jack's life and taken what mattered most. Jack reassured the school that there had been miscommunication and nothing was wrong, as instructed. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this man had been planning this for a long time. Every detail was perfect, every move calculated. He had known exactly how to exploit Jack's trust in the system, how to use his own name against him. Back in Vahalig Valley, Jack stood and brushed the dirt from his hands. The memory gnawed at him, a relentless reminder of his failure. He had been in this echo of reality for too long, and the longer he stayed, the more he felt the weight of his guilt. But he couldn't afford to dwell on the past. The barren landscape around him, with its occasional unsettling anomalies, was a reflection of the void within him, but also a testament to his resolve. He was here to find Sarah, to undo the wrong that had been done. The echo had her, and he knew he was close. Every step he took brought him closer to answers and closer to her. The trail had been cold, with only fleeting signs of her presence, like melody in the wind, a fleeting shadow, or a piece of cloth snagged on a branch. But it was enough to keep him going. Darlow, from a distance, motioned for Jack to come over.
Did I mention that we have sources, Jack? Sources in high places. Sources which tell us that the overlap has Sarah. They have her in captivity, wretched bastards, parading her as a trophy before the twins.
Where? Tell me the location, Jack demanded.
We know she was taken by the overlap. We think she is being taken to the Royal Enclave.
What is that? Now, he insisted.
It is a very special place, a majestic walled garden, where the royal family has resided for eons. It is where the serpent tempted the first man. It is ancient, but has no known beginning. Crucially, it is about 4 days' travel by airship, the conventional kind. It is the one place our discs don't go. That's why the royals prefer staying close. Less to worry about, I reckon.
Jack wasn't sure if it was hyperbole or factual. He just knew he needed to go there, and Darlow could see it.
I will make the necessary travel arrangements with the boatman. Come along.
Chapter 15. The Iron Guard Council. Bismarck stood at the window of the stone fortress, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon. The ancient stronghold, a relic of the Echo's once great empire, was now a symbol of their supposed decline. His last words in the council chamber echoed in his mind. As it was in the beginning, so it shall be in the end. The fortress, though aged, was deceptively well guarded. Beneath its crumbling facade lay technology far beyond what the overlap could fathom. But for now, it was all hidden, part of the grand deception. Bismarck turned from the window as the heavy doors of the council chamber creaked open. His most trusted advisors filed in, their expressions a mixture of concern and determination.
General Jirok, battle-scarred and weary, was the first to speak. The raid at Vahilig Valley, yet another failure, Jirok said, his voice low. The overlap is growing more confident with each victory.
Bismarck remained silent, his gaze drifting over the ancient map spread across the stone table. The overlap, with all its power, had no idea of the true strength that lay in wait. Every defeat, every retreat, had been meticulously planned. The Echo were not retreating out of weakness. They were laying the groundwork for their resurgence. Let them think we are weak, Bismarck finally said, his voice calm but firm. We are playing a longer game, one they cannot see. His thoughts turned to his family, the twins, his nieces, who the overlap and possibly even themselves believed to be his adversaries. Their opposition is necessary, a carefully crafted element in the plan. The true purpose will one day be revealed, and it will be glorious. Patience is needed, now more than ever. We have invested many decades on this campaign. Absent loved ones, gone from here for more years than I now care to count. The ancients will one day look favorably on us again. Bismarck stood before the Iron Guard advisors, a group of the most formidable minds and warriors in the Echo. The cold, dim light from the chamber's high windows cast long shadows across the table, where strategic reports lay scattered together with advanced paper-thin electronic tablets. Bismarck was unyielding, his gaze sharp as he assessed each face before him. The overlap believes they have us figured out, Bismarck began, his voice resonating with a quiet intensity. They see our losses as a sign of weakness, as proof that they have the upper hand. But their arrogance blinds them to the truth. The advisors remained silent, their expressions stern but attentive. They had all witnessed the consequences of the overlap's assumptions, seen the devastation in their own world. But they also knew Bismarck, knew that every word he spoke was measured, every action calculated. General Strasser, a veteran of countless battles, spoke up, his voice carrying an air of wisdom.
You say these losses are calculated, Bismarck, but our people suffer, our world bleeds. What are we to gain from this sacrifice?
Bismarck's gaze never wavered. The overlap underestimates the Echo. They believe that because they have more resources, more numbers, they can break us. But they fail to grasp the essence of our world, of what the echo truly represents. We are not a mere reflection of their world, not some pale imitation. We are a force that has existed alongside them, hidden but powerful, waiting for the right moment.
And what moment is that?
Demanded Lady Verena, her voice sharp, reflecting both her intelligence and her impatience.
What is it that we're waiting for, Bismarck? Why continue to endure these losses?
Bismarck took a step forward, his presence commanding the room, the moment when they believe they've won. When the overlap, in their hubris, exposes their vulnerabilities. That is when we strike, when we reveal the true strength of the echo. Their world is built on the illusion of dominance, on the belief that they can control everything they touch. But they cannot control us, not when they don't even understand what we are. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. You all know the story of Hiroshima, he said, his voice lowering slightly. The overlap tells it as a victory, a demonstration of their power. But what they don't realize is that it was also a moment of revelation for us. The devastation they wrought was not just a blow to our world, but a catalyst. It forced us to see the true nature of their power and their weakness. There was a murmur of agreement from some of the advisors, but Bismarck could sense the underlying fear, the doubt that still lingered. He understood it, he had shared it once. But now, he was certain of the path they must take, the overlap. Bismarck continued, is blind to the deeper currents that run through our world. They see only the surface, the battles, the losses. But beneath that, the echo is preparing. We have let them believe they are winning, that we are on the brink of collapse. But what they see as weakness is, in fact, our greatest strength.
General Strasser leaned forward, his expression hard. And what of the echo's true strength, Bismarck? What is this power you speak of? Bismarck's eyes gleamed with a cold light.
Bismarck's eyes gleamed with a cold light. The echo is not just another world existing in parallel to theirs. It is a living, breathing entity, an embodiment of everything they fear but do not understand. Our world is resilient, adaptable, and far more ancient than theirs. They think they are the center of the universe. But they are nothing more than a plan B in the grand scheme of things.
Lady Verena's gaze was intense as she spoke again. And how do we show them that? How do we make them realize their error?
Bismarck allowed a rare smile to cross his lips, though it was not a smile of warmth. It was a smile of inevitability. We continue to bide our time. We allow them to think they have the upper hand, and when the time is right, we will unleash the full power of the echo. They will not know what hit them. He paused, looking each advisor in the eye, ensuring they understood the gravity of his words. It's about showing them the truth, showing them that the echo is not their enemy, but their genesis. If they cannot accept that, then they will be destroyed by their own arrogance. The room fell silent. The weight of Bismarck's words settling over the advisors like a shroud. They had always known he was a strategist, a man who played the long game. But now, they saw the depth of his vision, the full scope of his plan. Prepare the Iron Guard, Bismarck said, his voice a command that brooked no argument. The overlap believes they are close to victory. Let them think that. Let them continue to underestimate us. But when the moment comes, we will strike with a force they could never have anticipated. The advisors nodded, their resolve hardening. They had chosen to follow Bismarck for a reason, and now, more than ever, they were ready to see his vision through to the end. As the meeting adjourned, Bismarck remained standing, staring out into the distance, his thoughts far beyond the room. He knew the stakes were high, that the path ahead would be fraught with peril. But he also knew that the echo was more than ready. The overlap's time was running out, and when the truth finally came to light, it would be Bismarck and the echo who stood victorious. Not as conquerors, but as the true heirs of both worlds.
Chapter 16, The Team Returns. The Angkor Wat complex in Cambodia is not only a site of immense historical and spiritual significance, but also the point where two worlds, the overlap and the echo, intersect. The grand structure, with its towering spires and intricate carvings, sits at the heart of this nexus. The walls of the temple depict scenes from ancient Hindu texts, and the gallery of 1,000 Buddhas whispers tales of a time long past, where the boundary between worlds was known only to a select few. As the sun begins to set, casting a golden hue over the temple, a hidden passage beneath the central tower is illuminated. This subterranean chamber, buried deep within the earth, is one of the most sacred spots in Angkor Wat. Known only to those with clearance, this room serves as the aerial projector room in the overlap, a relatively small high-tech cavity with walls that pulse with an otherworldly energy. Ancient carvings, unseen by the eyes of common visitors, line the walls, their meanings lost to time. But this place is more than just a historical relic. It is a functioning piece of advanced, yet ancient technology. The central floor is engraved with an elaborate symbol, and at its heart is the transfer node, a metallic sphere with a slight turquoise glow. A stone-like slab, propped up at a 45-degree angle from the floor. It has strange characters in an unknown language, appearing to morph into different characters before your very eyes. The letters shine piercing in the same blue-green color glow. It is a monitor, but unlike anything known outside. The letters morph to form the words, Incoming Transfer Node 6, as the air crackles with energy, and the turquoise light from the node intensifies. A technician, one of 8 in the room, leans forward and presses their open palm firmly against the slab, accepting the transfer. A blindingly bright light shooting up through the temple's central tower and illuminating the night sky moments later. The beam pierces the heavens, signaling the imminent return of SEAL Team 6 from the Echo. Above Angkor Wat, there are lightning flashes, despite there being no clouds. The rotors roar, slicing through the air as the 3 Chinook helicopters suddenly appear. The vibrations causing ripples in the nearby ponds and scattering the local wildlife as they descend. The lead Chinook hovers directly above the temple's central spire, its powerful lights focusing on the ground below. As the helicopter lands, the rear ramp lowers and a figure emerges from the darkness. A voice crackles over the comms, echoing through the chamber.
We are going to need you to proceed with mission debrief immediately, sir. Sorry about that. But the situation is time critical.
Chief Petty Officer Herbert Tabasco Jacobs, the senior member of SEAL Team 6, steps forward, his silhouette cutting an imposing figure against the backdrop of the ancient temple. His mission in the Echo was a success, but he knows that the challenges in the overlap are just beginning. He feels accomplished. But he also has a sense of loss, as he had connected with Sarah in her moment of fragility. The complete and utter vulnerability of a misplaced child, in that place. Leaving her with the steward went against his instincts. He caught his emotions crawling in. He followed orders, and that's that. That's that, and that's the end of it, he thought.
Meanwhile, in the Echo, the airship harbor receded into the distance. Sarah, a small and timid 8-year-old, sat in the plush passenger seat, her legs barely reaching the edge of the cushion. Her wide eyes, filled with a mix of awe and trepidation, observed the world outside as they drove through the royal enclave. The steward, an older man with kind, wise eyes, steered the vehicle smoothly along the winding roads. The trees lining the path shimmered with an ethereal glow, casting dappled light on the road ahead. The palace, a magnificent structure of ancient stone and gleaming towers, loomed in the distance, drawing closer with each passing moment. Sarah shifted in her seat, clutching the hem of her dress with small, nervous hands. Sensing her unease, the steward glanced over with a gentle smile. "Are you all right, Miss Sarah?" he asked, his voice a comforting melody in the otherwise quiet car.
Sarah hesitated before nodding, though the tension in her tiny frame was palpable. "I think so," she whispered. "But the twins..."
The steward's smile deepened with understanding. It's natural to feel a little overwhelmed. The royal twins are quite extraordinary, after all. Sarah looked up at him, her brow furrowed in confusion.
"They're not like me, are they?"
The steward chuckled softly, a warm, reassuring sound. "No, they're not like you, not exactly. They've lived for over a century, but despite their age, they retain a certain youthfulness in appearance and spirit. They've seen much of this world and beyond. But I assure you, they have kind hearts." Sarah's eyes widened further.
100 years old, she whispered, the number too vast for her young mind to fully grasp.
Yes, the steward nodded. But they look like they're in their early 20s. They've learned much in their long lives, but they haven't forgotten what it means to be young at heart. They're eager to meet you, and I'm sure they'll be as curious about you as you are about them.
Sarah's grip on her dress loosened slightly, though the uncertainty remained. But what if they don't like me? I'm just me.
As the vehicle rounded a bend, the palace gates came into view, towering and majestic. Beyond them, the expansive garden stretched out in a riot of color, leading to the grand entrance of the palace. The steward slowed the vehicle as they approached, guiding it along the cobblestone path with practiced ease. "We're here," he said gently as the vehicle came to a stop in front of the grand doors. He turned to Sarah, offering a reassuring smile. "There's no need to be afraid. The twins may have lived many lifetimes, but at this moment they are simply two people eager to welcome you." The steward opened the passenger door. "Remember, Sarah," he said softly, leaning down to meet her eye level, "you are a guest of honor here. The twins have lived through many ages, but today they have the pleasure of meeting someone truly special. You."
With those words echoing in her mind, Sarah straightened her small shoulders and took a step forward into the palace, ready to meet the enigmatic royal twins who had seen centuries pass but were, in this moment, simply waiting to meet her.
Chapter 17. The Phantom's Web. The bunker was dimly lit by harsh, flickering white tube lights that cast a stark, unsettling glow. The intermittent flashes of one particularly faulty light created a disorienting strobe effect, adding to the already oppressive atmosphere. Ghost surrounded by the concrete walls of his underground sanctuary. At the center of the room, on a pedestal bathed in the erratic light, rested the relic he had secured, a small, unassuming stone orb of about 10 centimeters in diameter. A decent fit for an adult hand. Adorned with strange symbols, reminiscent of Sumerian text maybe, or at least a variation, Arabic perhaps. Despite its relatively plain appearance, the box was the focus of Ghost's attention. Its true significance lay in its capacity to harness and amplify tremendous amounts of energy. The relic was a crucial component in his broader plan, yet it was only one part of his agreement. Ghost's thoughts were preoccupied with the promise he had made, to deliver two powerful objects to the Echo. One half of the agreement had been fulfilled with the delivery of the first item. The relic was still in his possession, its immense power yet to be transferred. The completion of this task was essential for the full realization of his commitment. The scene shifted abruptly, like a dream fading into waking reality. The bunker dissolved, replaced by the interior of a sleek, black SUV. Ghost, now dressed in tactical gear, was seated in the back seat. The hum of the engine and the rhythmic thud of tires on the road created a stark contrast to the harsh lighting of the bunker. As they approached NORAD, a security checkpoint came into view. Stefan instinctively began to brake sharply, his hands gripping the wheel with tension.
Shit. I don't think we have clearance for this. Any ideas?
"Let's get off the road," Emily said in a hurried fashion.
But Ghost, his face calm and unreadable, leaned forward and placed a hand on Stefan's shoulder. "Continue past the checkpoint," Ghost advised unexpectedly. "Leave this to me." Stefan hesitated, his eyes darting between the checkpoint and Ghost's steady gaze. After a moment's pause, he nodded and maneuvered the SUV forward, ignoring the checkpoint guards who began to approach. As they neared the gate, the security personnel moved towards the driver's side window, preparing to inspect their credentials. Stefan signaled for the guard to come to the rear window. Ghost, seated in the back, rolled down the window with deliberate slowness. He reached into a compartment, retrieved a pen, and wrote a series of numbers on a clipboard presented by the guard. "Run this number," Ghost said firmly, his voice carrying an edge of authority. The security guard, perplexed but trained to follow protocol, took the clipboard and disappeared into the guardhouse to verify the information. Moments later, the heavy security gate began to rise with a groaning sound, indicating clearance. Unbeknownst to the SUV occupants, a sniper perched high in the hills, concealed behind a camouflage position, withdrew from their scope. A spotter beside the sniper lowered their rangefinder, both moving with practiced precision. Their mission had been to monitor the checkpoint, but with the gate opening smoothly, they knew their task had shifted. The SUV rolled through the now open gate and continued towards NORAD. Ghost was now committed to the execution and orchestration of his plan. The completion of his promise with the relic's delivery was a critical element yet to be fulfilled. He considered the presence of Emily and Stefan to be a necessary part of his credentials, but he also knew that access and actual transfer were two very different things.
Around the same time, in the Echo, shifting to a different scene, as Jack and Darlow arrived at the airship harbor, a colossal structure that rose from the flat grassy terrain. The harbor sprawled before them, an expanse of gleaming metal and bustling activity. The most striking feature was the pair of immense airships tethered to towering structures. These ships, reminiscent of the Hindenburg, but far more elaborate, were enormous, their copper-like exteriors gleaming in the twilight. Each was anchored to a massive, spiraling tower that reached high into the sky. These towers were adorned with intricate gears and steam vents, puffing clouds of mist that added to the scene's dramatic flair. The towers were connected by broad, metal walkways festooned with hanging lights that flickered with a neon glow. Below, the airship's landing platforms were a hive of activity, with workers and engineers moving with precision, their movements reflecting the meticulous choreography of a well-oiled machine. The airships themselves were marvels of engineering, their hull studded with brass rivets and illuminated by soft, amber lights. Massive propellers and turbines, decorated with ornate filigree, whirred gently as the vessels prepared for their next journey. Above, the sky was a canvas of swirling purples and oranges, casting a surreal light over the harbor. Jack and Darlow stood at the edge of the platform, their eyes scanning the scene. The harbor was a fusion of old-world charm and futuristic technology, a place where steam power and cybernetics coexisted in perfect harmony.
"It's quite the sight, I reckon. Quite the sight," Darlow said, looking at Jack.
Jack had to admit, the atmosphere was electric, charged with the promise of impending adventure. As they made their way towards the main terminal, the airship's massive silhouette loomed overhead, a testament to ingenuity and ambition. The combination of steel, steam, and neon lights created an otherworldly ambience, setting the stage for the next phase of their mission.
Chapter 18: The Fragile Veneer of Power. President Holden strode through the corridors of the Overlap Command Center, known as the OCC, the cold gleam of steel and glass reflecting his hurried footsteps. He had recently returned from his voyage to New York, where he met with the twins in the royal enclave nestled in the city. The travel challenges associated with the enclave was significant and time-consuming. The rest of the Echo operates with fluid efficiency, compared to the slow modes of travel he had just experienced, opulent as it was. A message had reached him moments ago. An Odin key had been activated at Cheyenne Mountain, back on Earth. The old NORAD site. Although no longer in use, it still contained a nexus point. An Odin key was just used to gain access to the complex, and they all knew what that meant. This was an exceptionally rare event. It implied that one of a sparse handful high-level trusted sources in the overlap was in possession of critical priority 1 intelligence. A need-to-know NTK transfer, indicating that existential information was ready to be transferred. The unexpected discovery at Vahiligvali had shaken the foundations of their understanding of the Iron Guard. Now this could be the piece that tied it all together. Holden's pulse quickened as he approached the Nexus room. The transfer hadn't commenced yet, but it was imminent. It was pre-arranged, pre-authorized, that an Odin key will automatically remove all barriers to immediate transfer. No one, not even the twins, could refuse an Odin key. That is how the information that could fall within the parameters of an Odin key was viewed, existential, and therefore all access and full support of anyone in contact with the key holder. Now, Holden's mind raced with the possibilities. His steps quickened. 2 weeks might have passed since his arrival, but the world back home was still reeling from the assassination attempt. The media had been fed the story that he was in recovery, but Holden knew it was only a matter of time before the "President No-Show" headlines started gaining traction. How long could they maintain the illusion of him being bedridden before the cover wore thin? Not many people on Earth even knew about the Echo, fewer than 100 individuals, all sworn to secrecy. But here in the Echo, the overlap was a reality. Everyone knew the stakes. This secrecy intrigued Holden. He had been a politician long enough to recognize how fragile the veil of power was. On Earth, information was kept from the masses, drip-fed to maintain order. But in the Echo, the overlap's existence was common knowledge. A duality of control he found fascinating. Power, after all, wasn't just about what you held, it was about what you could conceal. He reached the entrance to the Nexus room. The doors slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing the pulsating glow of the Nexus point at the heart of the room. Holden paused at the threshold, his eyes drawn to the steady thrum of energy emanating from the node. This was where the transfer would come through, the high-level information that could change everything. For a moment he was alone with his thoughts. The twins and the security detail would arrive soon to oversee the transfer, but right now, Holden had a rare moment of quiet. His mind shifted back to the Odin key. There was no mistaking what it meant. Whoever had triggered it had the kind of intelligence that couldn't wait, the kind that transcended protocols and procedure. Holden paced the length of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. The child at Vahelig Valley was just one piece of the puzzle, and now, with the Odin key activated, Holden felt a growing certainty that the puzzle's other pieces were finally coming into view. But even as the thought passed through his mind, another lingered just beneath the surface. The Echo was an untapped frontier, a world as yet undefined by Earth's rules. Holden had been brought here by chance, or had it been more than that? Since his arrival, a hunger had grown within him, a desire not just to understand this place but to shape it. There was power here waiting to be claimed, and he was starting to realize he might be the one to claim it. The Nexus Point's hum grew louder, a sign that the energy levels were building in preparation for the incoming transfer. Holden turned toward the console, noting the soft flicker of lights as the system began cycling through its protocols. The transfer was expected in less than an hour from now. Everything was in motion. Holden exhaled, his breath slow and deliberate. He had always been a man of ambition, but standing here, in this room on the cusp of receiving knowledge that could shift the balance of power between worlds, he felt something stirred deeper within him. Maybe an opportunity. A chance to rewrite the rules. But first, the Odin key's message had to arrive, and when it did, Holden would be ready.
A delicate balance awakens in the silent void. Here destiny's hidden pulse unites distant realms. A quiet promise that